Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen, and in this video I'm doing my September reading wrap-up. This month I read 4 books, 2 companion novels, and 2 books for which I had already seen their movies. But starting with the companion novels, we have The First Girl Child, which I read last year, and it was my favorite new read of the year. It was a 5-star read. And so this year I reread it, and then the companion novel, The Second Blind Son, just came out, so I read that as well. But starting with The First Girl Child, I'm not going to go too deep into this one since I did talk about it in last September's wrap-up. I will link the video if you're interested, but I still did want to talk about it a little bit. In my wrap-up last year, I mentioned that I did not like the main relationship in the book, the relationship between Bear and Alba, because it's very much like a older brother protector figure to lover relationship, which I just find very strange and creepy. But what I didn't mention in the last video where I talked about this book was that I do really like the relationship between Dagmar and Ghost. I think that relationship is super cute, and I also just really like both of the characters. I like Bear and Alba okay, I just don't like them together, but I really like Dagmar and Ghost, and I like them even better together. Dagmar is just so sweet, such a good guy, and then I also really like Ghost as a character. I like how at the end of the book she finally takes power for herself and does it in this really constructive way. I kind of saw on this second read more of like a mirroring between the character of Ghost and Bear's mother, who dies giving birth to him and then puts a curse on the land that no men in her country will be able to produce daughters anymore because they so often mistreat them. And Ghost's existence at the beginning of the book, the beginning of her story, very much kind of confirms Bear's mother's assessment of the country. Ghost has had her child stolen from her by the same man who abandoned Bear's mother. Men view her in a very terrible way, based solely on her looks, and often threaten her and harass her. And so it very much just kind of confirms, like, Bear's mother was right for laying this curse on the men. But then at the end of the book, Ghost is able to kind of take her own power and get back at the man who wronged both her and Bear's mother, but then goes on to help her country, whereas Bear's mother, what she did kind of hurt the country as a whole, including the women, although it did kind of lead to women getting a little bit more power in the society, being allowed to be a part of the keepers and everything. So I do think Bear's mother was right to lay the curse. I'm not saying she was wrong to do that, but it's nice that at the end that Ghost's revenge gets to be even a little bit more productive. So yeah, those were kind of some of my new thoughts on getting to have a second read with this book. Another new thought was I also think that the first half of the book is constructed a little bit better than the second half. The second half gets just some parts that feel just slightly too fast and not like developed enough. But overall, still a 5-star read. Love it a lot. So then the next book I read was the companion novel, The Second Blind Son, also by Amy Harmon. And this one actually takes place at the same time, the same timeline as the first book, but follows different characters. It's got 2 main characters, and one of them is actually a side character in the first book. She's one of the daughters that gets given to the keepers of Saylock, along with Alba, one of our 2 main characters from the first book. And so what ends up happening is this book really feels the exact same as the first book, but just told from the perspective of a side character, which makes it pretty slow, a little boring. You really don't learn that much new information. And it also just takes a lot of like agency away from our 2 main characters because they didn't really affect the plot at all in the first book. And therefore, since this book is the exact same plot, exact same timeline, it means that they don't affect the plot of this book a whole lot either, even though they are now the main characters. So overall, that made this book feel pretty unnecessary. And also it feels strange because, spoiler alert, one of our two main characters in this book ends up being revealed to be the sibling of one of our main characters from the first book. And so then it just feels weird that that's not mentioned and not something we knew about in the first book. Because at the end of this book, there's this whole little wrap-up where, like, they are siblings now and they know that they're siblings now. And so it's just ends up being very strange that, looking back on it, one of the two main characters in the first book found out they had a sibling at the end of the book, but we didn't know that. Another thing that it was kind of interesting at first, but it got tiresome pretty quickly, was there were some scenes in this book that were word for word replicas of scenes from the first book, because again, we're getting the same exact book just from the perspective of a side character. And so at first I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is a scene that was in the first book, but I was assuming still, it was early enough in the book that I was assuming that we were going to branch out more and get a whole new story at some point, but we never did. I will say this one gave me really strong Princess Academy and Goose Girl vibes by Shannon Hale. It felt much more fairy tale-y and youthful in a way, maybe like a little bit less dark than the first book, which I really enjoyed those vibes. The other thing that made me think of Princess Academy was the fact that our main character, Gisela, when she sings, our other main character who's blind can see whatever she sings for him. So if she sings about the daughters who are living with the keepers, he can kind of see them in his mind's eye, which was really cool, and they can communicate this way over long distances. And this reminded me of Princess Academy because in that book, the girls can communicate through the stone in the ground, again by singing into the stone, and it kind of carries their song to the other people from their community. So very similar means of communications in those two books, which again I really enjoyed because Princess Academy is a childhood favorite, so anything that has any of those kinds of vibes I will enjoy. Also, the fact that the main character from this book is a sibling of the main character from the first book, I think was supposed to kind of be a bit of a twist, but I figured that twist out pretty quickly, so it was not really a surprise. Again, I had kind of problems with the romance in this book. It wasn't a creepy romance so much, but I just never felt like the main romance had a lot of chemistry, so I just didn't really care for it. And at one point, our main character, who is also our main love interest, he felt kind of like a villain almost for a little while there, which wasn't great because he's supposed to be the hero. And then also the relationship did get a little bit questionable during that time because him and his love interest kind of got separated for years and years, had no way to communicate, not even through their songs. And he kind of goes to the actual villain of the book and is like, hey, I will help you if you give me this girl who we used to be in love, and I'm gonna take her away to a foreign country. I have no idea if she's in love with me anymore, but I'm just gonna take her and off we will go. So that was kind of problematic. She does end up still being in love with him, but still. And then yeah, like I said, the two main characters of this book just had absolutely no effect on the plot or anything that happened in this story because the story had already been written. So with that being said, it still had nice vibes and I still moderately enjoyed reading it, so I gave it 3 stars because I enjoyed it. I didn't hate reading it, but it was incredibly unnecessary. Was not a book that needed to exist in my opinion. So then after that, I read Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. This is my second Jojo Moyes book. I have also read The Last Letter from Your Lover, for which I have not seen the movie yet. There is a movie for that on Netflix and I would like to see it, but I haven't yet. And then this one, I had seen the movie back when it first came out, and I had never read the book before. So I was excited to read it because I enjoyed the movie and I enjoyed the other Jojo Moyes book that I read. But that being said, I don't feel like I got much more out of the book than I did out of the movie. It was enjoyable, but it wasn't one of those ones where I was like, oh, the book was way better. It does give me P.S. I Love You vibes with the storyline of the main male love interest dying and kind of telling the female love interest that she needs to get a life now that he's gone, basically. And also that life involving fashion design. I do feel like this book had a little bit of a mixed message. I personally am okay with Will wanting to end his life. I think that is a personal decision that people should be able to make for themselves, but I do have a problem with him implying that Lou shouldn't be satisfied with her little life and that it's her responsibility to live her life to the fullest because he can't. I think that's bullshit. If Lou enjoys the life that she has, that's the life that she should go for. Not everybody thinks that traveling is the way to live. And so that just felt like a mixed message to me. The fact that Will not wanting to live for his reasons is okay, but Lou not wanting to travel and like go after some big career and be rich and successful and all this other stuff is not okay. I think they're both okay. I also didn't super connect with any of the characters. They were all just kind of okay. All of them at times could be a little bit annoying, especially some of Lou's family members. But it's of course an emotional read, also an emotional movie. But like I said, I felt like the movie would have been enough for me. That being said, I can't decide if I want to continue with this series, because it is a series, but there's only one movie, only for the first book, and so I can't decide if I want to continue with the story or not, because I did enjoy reading it, and since there are not movies, the only way to know how it goes is either to look up synopses or to read the next books, and I'm just not sure. I gave it 3 stars because, like I said, I did enjoy reading it, so that leaves me unsure. I'm worried that I'll read the next one and think this book didn't need a sequel, but also I'd be curious to know Lou's journey after this. So if you've read the whole series, maybe let me know in the comments what you thought of the sequel. I would be interested to know. So moving on to the final book I read this month, it was The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, which this one also had a movie based on it, which I had already seen. And once again, I don't feel like I got a whole lot more out of the book than I did out of the movie. Although it was not a perfect adaptation, I feel like they aged the character in the movie up for quite a lot of the scenes, which made them seem less bad than they actually were, which I don't really appreciate. But other than that, I feel like they were pretty similar. I feel a little bit hard to critique memoirs because you're literally just critiquing someone telling their life story. But as far as it goes, I was very interested. It was definitely an interesting life story. She basically just relays the events of her life pretty much in the order that they happened, which the events of her life are interesting. She doesn't give a whole lot of commentary about like how she felt about things or what she thought about them then or now as an adult. She kind of just lays it out and says, this is what happened, here you go. Which in a way is kind of nice. She certainly isn't whiny about anything that happened, which a lot of bad things happen, so like totally would be in her rights to be a lot more complainy and judgmental about some of the stuff that happened. But instead she just kind of presents the facts, which I didn't mind because like I said, it's all interesting stuff, but at the same time I wouldn't mind knowing a little bit more about her thoughts on the events. So I feel like that's kind of a taste thing, and it's just a matter of, do you like more just cut and dry facts, or do you want more of the emotional deep dive? And this, if you're looking for that emotional deep dive, this doesn't have a whole lot of that. So yes, I gave this one 3 stars because I enjoyed it. Didn't get much more out of it than I did out of the movie. And yeah, it was just an interesting read. but I don't plan on keeping it because I don't think I ever really need to reread it. Don't regret reading it, certainly, but don't feel the need to read it again. So yes, these were all of the books that I read in September. I had such a good time going back into the land of Salok with The First Girl Child. I wish the companion novel had maybe focused on a new story separate from the first one, but what can you do? I still have a favorite here with The First Girl Child. Let me know down below what you read this September and also your opinion on the sequel, For Me Before You. I would like to know. And now on to the quote for today's video, which today I have one from Finding Neverland, and it goes, "Young boys should never be sent to bed. They always wake up a day older." Thanks for watching. Remember, words matter.